days of power. So happy Rama's birthday, which is technically tomorrow, February 9th. But when there's a day of power, that you can tap into that power usually a week before and a week after. So we can celebrate for 2 weeks every day of power. So these days of power, these holy days that we have in Trikaya Buddhism, we have 7 throughout the year. There is Rama's birthday. Rama is my teacher, and he is a fully enlightened being, and we celebrate his birthday as the reminder that Buddhas walk among us, that within each one of us is a Buddha, that enlightenment is real, and that it is attainable in this very lifetime. We don't have to store up millions and millions of merit points and then cash them in at the window. You couldn't, or maybe you already have accumulated all your millions and millions of merit points, and that's why you're here now, hearing this, realizing that enlightenment is here right now. It's available. In fact, you already are enlightenment. You're never separate from enlightenment. But there's this story that you've told yourself that you get a lot of social support around that's saying that you're not, but you are. And so we celebrate on this path of Trikaya Buddhism, we celebrate Rama's birthday as a reminder of that. And we also celebrate the day that he left this world. Now, the official date is April 12th, but I know it was April 11th because I felt it. But that day we celebrate the formlessness of enlightenment. That now that he's not restricted to a body, he can do so much more. Don't have to manage all this day-to-day stuff. And sometimes he might show up in your dreams. It happens. I see him every so often. Sometimes I'll go hunt for him. And you'll know that it's really him, because when you wake up from the dream, even if it was really intense, when you wake up, there is a sense of joy, a deep peace, or it's just hilariously funny. And if it's not one of those things, then it wasn't him, because sometimes there's imposters. And the same is for me. Like if I show up in your dream and it's not either just seriously funny or very, very happy, very peaceful feeling when you awaken, it wasn't me. It was something else. But we celebrate the day he left as a holiday to remind us that we are not physical, that we are much more than these fragile bodies, that we stretch on into infinity and beyond. And then we have our equinoxes, 2 of those, 2 solstices, and then our own personal birthday. Now, our own personal birthday is a time for you to look at your own karma, the flow of actions, your habitual patterns, and then look at your personal Dharma, the part of you when you connect with it, it says, yes, that's what I'm here to experience. And you can, on your birthday, it's a really excellent day of power where it becomes very easy to see those two side by side. Sometimes they're very aligned, and you're like, oh, I've tuned my karma to such a point that now these habitual patterns are actually supporting my Dharma. And we're in this beautiful flow. And then other times we're like get caught. We're like skipping on a record, you know. You guys listen to records, you know how sometimes it skips and you play that same little bit over and over and over again. That's karma. And on our personal birthday, if we tune into it, we can see that. And we can make adjustments to say, well, you know what, instead of just repeating the same old story, the same old cycle, maybe I'm gonna lift the needle off the record and just key into my Dharma. So these days of power, a day of power is an opportunity to experience a certain dimension. Now, these dimensions are always available all the time. But on a day of power, it's just a little bit easier. It's like a little doorway opens. And so instead of us having to go and find the door and then jiggle the handle, and maybe pick the lock and break into it, on a day of power, it's open. And all we have to do to take advantage of it is to focus our attention on that quality that day of power represents. So today, tomorrow, I want to invite you to really key into enlightenment and Buddhas and your own Buddha nature. And allow yourself to feel that. Don't try to add anything to it. Don't try to make a story out of it. Just notice and contemplate, what is that? What is this Buddha of which she speaks? And if you need help, you can listen to a Rama talk. They're available online for free. Or you can just contemplate, look at his picture, look at any Buddha's picture, watch the sunset, look for that magic of enlightenment, and it's very present right now. And then not long from now, we'll reach the equinox. We have a spring equinox and a fall equinox. And the equinoxes are times when it's very easy to key into equanimity, the sense of balance. We're so attuned to always be looking for differences, to always be judging, oh, this is better, this is worse, I prefer this, I don't like that, I love this, hate that. And we're constantly in that push-pull, that attraction and aversion. When we reach an equinox, this time of equanimity, it's an opportunity to let go of that operating system, to let go of this aversion, attraction operating system, and experience what it's like to be neither attracted nor repulsed. So you're not chasing after anything and you're not pushing anything away. You're just allowing yourself to be. And whatever shows up in your face, there's no need to grab a hold of it, and there's no need to push it away, no matter what it is. This is the practice of equanimity. And again, it's available all year long. This is something that we practice as part of Buddhism, is equanimity. We try to hone this quality within ourselves because it's a key that unlocks many, many states of attention. It's like that first bridge we need to cross, that bridge of equanimity, where we can experience all the different energies, all the different forces, all the different options that are available in life without freaking out. Without all of a sudden saying, oh my God, yes, I need to have that. Or, oh my goodness, no, keep that away. Ew, get away. You're so low vibe. Or, ooh, this is super high vibe. I like this. Equanimity is just peace, balance. It's not sticking our head in the sand and pretending nothing's happening. It's the opposite. It's being fully aware of like, oh, this is happening, and oh, that's gone, and oh, this is happening, oh, that's now gone. But we're able to do it from a very centered place of balance, a place of equanimity. And that's much easier to do on the equinoxes. So a week before, a week after, maybe write yourself a little note and say, maybe every morning I'm just going to consider, what is equanimity? How does that show up in my mind and in my life? And then we watch, we pay attention. And when we find that we are not practicing equanimity, we don't beat ourselves up. We just notice that, oh, I'm really, really attached right now. Or I'm really, really repulsed right now. And notice how that feels. Not so you can, again, judge yourself and beat yourself up. That's just another way of getting off balance. But just so you can have the experience. Now, when summer solstice rolls around, that is the movement of life. That's when the energy's really buzzing and there's growth happening. The trees are all in full leaf. Flowers are bursting open. That's compassion. It's the movement of light is compassion. Very masculine energy, which we all have masculine and feminine within us. But masculine is the movement. It's the kinetic force. And when it's centered in compassion, it opens up many, many doors, many beautiful dimensions of light. It is what brought us into being, is compassion. And compassion asks, how can I help? It gets distorted sometimes and we think, how do I fix that? How do I make that change so it works and makes sense to my current view? That's the distortion that we experience in this world. But rather, compassion seeks altruistic joy. It wants others to be happy and supported. So it asks, how can I help? It doesn't try to impose anything on anyone. Rather, it's supportive. It's like, oh, how can I move to support you? How can I move to be of assistance? And we can apply that to ourselves first. So what exactly am I trying to do? You know, when you find yourself super frustrated, that's a great question to ask yourself. What am I actually trying to do? And how can I help myself do that? That's compassion. And then finally we have the winter solstice. Winter solstice is stillness. It's wisdom. It's the all-encompassing void out of which everything arises and falls away. So when winter solstice comes, it's a time to allow ourselves to be very still and open. Rama would say winter solstice is actually the most powerful of all days because it is pure potentiality. It's everything that ever was and ever could be, all within one moment. Just waiting patiently. So we're on summer solstice, we're in motion and we want to direct that motion. We're like, okay, well, how can I help? Where can I focus? What can I do? We want to move. Winter solstice is the opposite. It's, oh, how can I just hold this space? How can I just be open and let everything happen without moving and running and trying to do so much? Just being open. Now again, these qualities of all these different days of power are always available. But it's easier to tap into on a day of power, which is why we celebrate them. We celebrate these 7 days of power throughout the year, and we use that power to enhance our practice, to help deepen our understanding of the path and of light. Sometimes we'll go to a place of power, which again allows us to tap into certain dimensions. So when we combine a day of power with a place of power, it's amplified even more. Now when we start to practice meditation, mindfulness, contemplation on a regular basis, and then we start to tap into a day of power or even a place of power, sometimes it feels like we've stuck our finger into an electric socket and we're just buzzing. When that happens, it's very helpful to center yourself on love. Just to figure out what it is that you love, or just the concept of love, and allow that to anchor your attention. So as all these different things happen, that these different buzzing sensations move through you, the intense emotions, because power doesn't care what you do with it. All it wants to do is move. It's going to flow through you. So all we can do is focus our attention, and that will direct the flow of power. if we don't do that and we tap into power, it's going to move like water does, where water just looks for the path of least resistance. So if you have a habitual pattern that you engage in, that power is going to follow that pathway and it will amplify it. And if you indulge in things that don't feel so good, you'll probably feel pretty crappy. So remember that. If you're, feeling that buzzing sensation, like, okay, I'm plugged into some power here, and then all of a sudden maybe you're regurgitating old thought patterns and you're stuck in old mind states that don't feel so good, recognize what's happening. Say, oh, I'm taking all that power, that electricity that's flowing through me, and I'm putting it into this old pattern that makes me feel crappy. So guess what I can do? I can take all that power that's moving, it's like a fire hose, and just move it. And we can center on love. We can center on the quality that that day of power represents. So like for the next week or so, focus on enlightenment. Focus on Buddha nature. Even if you don't know what those words mean, just holding them in your mind gives that power a place to go. And like that, sometimes it really is like a fire hose. I don't know if you guys ever had a chance to actually hold a fire hose. Like when I was a little kid, I think it was like elementary school, the fire department came out and they turned the hose on for us, and we all had a turn, like going up and trying to control the fire hose. Not by ourselves, obviously, because we were just little kids. But, they let go just a little bit so we could feel, and this thing it just goes nuts. And that's what power feels like sometimes. But we are all strong enough, everyone, even when it doesn't feel that way. We're strong enough to control the focus of our mind. We might have to keep pointing back to love, or to Buddha nature, or to equanimity, or to compassion or wisdom, whatever the power of the day is, whatever that holiday is. And we might have to do it 100 times. But it will be 1,000 times stronger because you're tapping into that power. And you'll see changes happen rapidly in your state of mind. And then it flows out into your life if you keep up the focus and the pressure. So I want to encourage you to pay attention to where you're placing your attention. Don't just coast through life. Sorry, your days of coasting are over because you're listening to this. Yeah, they don't tell you the black box warning before you get on the spiritual path. Like, hey, once you start, you're going. But the good news is that you always have control over the focus of your mind. So even if you lose it, and the fire hose goes nuts and causes all this destruction, you can just reset in that moment. All you have to do is let go of the story that you were telling yourself. And then, of course, your mind wants a completed loop. So it'll be like, but no, like, I need to get to the end of the story. And it's like, well, no. This is the story now. This is what we're focusing on. I just rewatched a great movie. It's called Kubo and the Two Strings. You guys haven't watched it, it's really good. But it asks this question throughout the movie, is how does the story end? how does this story end? Because we oftentimes jump to conclusions and we think we know how the story is going to end, even though the story hasn't ended yet. And we create all this internal suffering and misery for ourselves and everyone around us. But the reality is the story hasn't ended yet. So we have that freedom at any given moment to focus our attention intentionally. So with this holiday and all the other holidays, I invite you to do that and to watch magic happen, to unfold before your very eyes. So now we should meditate. I'm going to play some zazen that is used with permission from Frederick Lenn's Foundation for American Buddhism. So we'll listen to 3 songs by zazen. First one will focus on the navel center and just feel that part of your being. Don't try to make anything happen. Just let your attention rest. Then we'll focus on the heart for the second song. And then finally, for the last song, we'll focus on the third eye, right between your eyebrows, just a little bit above. yes, meditate every day. Twice a day is better. And remember to pay attention. We get caught up in our stories so intensely. And we forget that we are these vast, multi-dimensional beings. And this physical reality, this one little storyline created out of a single sensory experience, is just one tiny thread in this vast tapestry of existence. And while it's real in the relative sense, you are experiencing that, there is much, much more happening at the same time. So yes, you may be going through a rough time, but the whole rest of your being is having a different experience. And as we become more and more aware of our multidimensional nature, it can be confusing. So this is why we train in focusing on beauty or gratitude. Because beauty or gratitude are present in every single moment. You don't have to leave the present moment to experience them. I'll share a little bit of a recent experience. One of my doctors put me on this estrogen cream. It's not supposed to not have any systemic effects. Well, it does. And it's been it was very interesting, because I've been practicing so long. I can say it was very interesting, but I just can't imagine how much harder it would be for somebody that didn't practice. But it was like this toddler having a temper tantrum in my head constantly about the stupidest things. And then I knew what was happening. And then of course, so now I have to prove my theory, stop using it, see what happens. And then it's oh, the toddler's gone. And then try it again, and then, oh, the estrogen toddler's back. And in those moments where it's just the little temper tantrums happening, it's not that wasn't happening, but there's this whole other experience happening simultaneously. And so in those moments when our brain or body is having a temper tantrum, we have a choice of where to focus our attention. It doesn't magically make the temper tantrum stop. We still have to do our due diligence and figure out, what's that about? How is that working? What's happening? And then in my case, it's oh, I started a new medication. Oh, interesting. Let me see what happens if I stop using it. Oh, went away. So there's this very scientific process that is part of Buddhism. So we don't go into denial and just paste a smile on our face because, yes, I can tap into these pure and perfect dimensions of light. But if I'm constantly having to quiet and turn away from the temper tantrum that's happening, it's exhausting. And then you add a day of power into that, and then it's just everything gets really, really intense. So what I recommend instead is to really hone this practice of beauty and gratitude, because then that will become your new normal. That will become when you start to coast. If you have created a habit of always seeking beauty or gratitude, then when you get distracted, that's what you'll do, is you'll be oh, what a beautiful tree. Instead of, oh, I can't believe that tree dropped all those leaves in my way. Same tree. And then when something shifts, when you have, temper tantrum, you'll notice it, and then instead of being just taken out by it, or even if you are taken out by it, you have this opportunity to investigate, well, what is this about? What's actually happening? Did I change something? Have I been ignoring something? Am I missing an opportunity, and all of my senses are trying to alert me to that opportunity? So this multidimensional being that we are communicates with us in very interesting ways. So pay attention. And when we have this baseline of beauty or gratitude, there's much less thought. So there's not so much clutter of the stories going on. And it makes it much easier to observe and experience what's actually happening. So I hope you very much enjoy this day of power, and that it brings you many blessings of enlightenment.